The last time these two stepped on the same court, the match barely had time to breathe before it was over. One player walked off looking unstoppable. The other walked off looking like she had just learned a painful lesson. And now, only weeks later, they're meeting again. But this time, the entire tennis world is watching, because something has changed, and if you're paying attention to the energy building around this match at BNP Paribas Open, you already know why. This isn't just another third-round match. This might be the beginning of a rivalry that defines the next generation of the women's tour. On one side, you have Coco Gauff, already a global superstar, already a two-time major champion, and already one of the most recognizable athletes in tennis. On the other side, there's Alexandra Eala, the rising star from the Philippines, whose fan base might be the loudest traveling crowd in tennis right now. Their first meeting in Dubai? It was brutal. Goff dominated from the very first game and closed the match 6-2, 6-2, one of those scorelines that tells you everything without needing highlights. But tennis has a funny way of rewriting stories. Because now they meet again at Indian Wells, and this time the atmosphere is completely different. And if you think this is going to look anything like Dubai, you might be in for a surprise. Let's rewind for a moment. Dubai was supposed to be a learning experience for Eala, a moment where a young player runs into a superstar and realizes just how big the gap still is. And for the first set, that gap looked enormous. Goff was sharp, aggressive, and completely in control. Her forehand dictated points, her defense turned impossible rallies into winners, and the scoreboard started moving at frightening speed. 60. That's the kind of set that leaves very little room for interpretation. But here's the thing people forget about young players. Sometimes the worst losses become the most valuable lessons, because after that match, Eala didn't disappear. She kept building. And now we're seeing the result. Fast forward to BNP Paribas Open, one of the most prestigious stops on the tour, often called the fifth Grand Slam. Both players entered the event with high expectations, both received first-round byes, and both had very different journeys into this third-round collision. For Goff, the road began against Kamila Rakimova. On paper, it looked straightforward, but tennis rarely follows the script. Goff won the first set 6-3 with her usual balance of power and defense. Yet in the second set, something interesting happened. Momentum shifted. Rakimova started swinging freely, taking risks, and suddenly Goff found herself trailing 2-5. That's the moment when matches can spiral. But champions tend to respond differently. Instead of panicking, Goff adjusted. She tightened her returns, slowed the pace between points, and forced the rallies back onto her terms. The comeback started quietly. One break, then another, then suddenly, the set was headed into a tiebreak. That's where Goff reminded everyone why she's already accomplished so much so early in her career. She closed it out 7-6, match over. But the message was clear. Even when things get uncomfortable, she finds a way. That ability to recover mid-match is what separates good players from elite ones. Now, let's talk about the other side of this matchup. Because Alexandra Eala had a very different test waiting for her. Her opponent was Diana Yastremska, a dangerous shotmaker capable of turning any match into a roller coaster. And that's exactly what happened. Eala took the first set 6-4 by staying patient and forcing longer rallies. But Yastremska is not the type of player who fades quietly. She came roaring back in the second set, raising the pace and stealing it 7-5. Suddenly the match was heading to a third set. For many young players, that's the moment where nerves take over, especially at a massive event like Indian Wells. But Eala held her ground. She played smart tennis, choosing her moments carefully, and eventually closed the match 6-4 in the final set. 3 sets. 2 hours of grinding, and one huge statement. Because this wasn't just a win, it was her first appearance at Indian Wells, and she was already through to the third round. And that's where things start getting interesting. Because the moment the draw revealed the potential rematch with Goff, fans started circling the date. Not because the previous match was competitive, but because rivalries often start exactly like this. 1-1. Dominant win. Then the rematch where everything changes. Now let's talk about something that makes this matchup even more fascinating. The relationship between these two players. Unlike many rivalries that come with tension or drama, Goff and Eala are actually friendly off the court. In fact, they even teamed up in doubles during the Italian Open last year. That partnership surprised a lot of fans, but it also revealed something about how players on the modern tour interact with each other. They compete fiercely on court, yet they can still respect and support each other away from the spotlight. So when they meet again at Indian Wells, there's no personal conflict and no bad blood. Just two competitors trying to prove something. For Goff, the goal is simple. Stay in control. Show that Dubai wasn't a fluke. Remind everyone why she's already one of the biggest names in tennis. For Eala, the mission is different. She doesn't need to win the match to change the narrative. She just needs to compete. Because the biggest criticism after Dubai wasn't about losing. It was about how quickly the match slipped away. This time, the expectation is simple. Fight. Push the rallies. Make Goff earn every game. And here's where the crowd becomes a factor. You might assume that playing in the United States automatically means the crowd will support the American player. But if you've watched Eala's matches recently, you know that assumption doesn't always hold up. Her supporters travel, and they travel loudly. Every tournament she enters, you can spot the Philippine flag scattered through the stands. You can hear the cheers during crucial points. It's become one of the most unique fan movements on the tour, and Indian Wells is no exception. There's a real possibility that a significant portion of the crowd will be cheering just as loudly for Eala as they are for Goff. That kind of atmosphere can change a match. Not dramatically, but subtly. Energy matters. Momentum matters. Noise matters. Now let's look at the bigger picture. Because this matchup isn't just about one match at Indian Wells, it's about the future of the tour. Goff has already established herself as a leading figure of the next generation. She's charismatic, talented, and capable of winning the biggest titles. But tennis history tells us something important. Every star eventually finds a rival, someone who pushes them harder, someone who brings out their best tennis. And some fans are starting to wonder if Eala could become that player. It's still early, way too early to make bold claims, but rivalries don't start with trophies. They start with repeated matchups. They start with adjustments. They start with the moment when the underdog finally pushes the favorite to the limit. That's exactly why this match is so intriguing. Because Eala already knows what it feels like to face Goff. She's already experienced the pace, the power, the intensity. That knowledge alone can change a rematch. Players learn quickly on the professional tour. They study film. They analyze patterns. They figure out what went wrong. So the question heading into Indian Wells isn't whether Goff is the favorite. She clearly is. The real question is this. How much closer has Eala gotten since Dubai? If the answer is a little, the match could become competitive. If the answer is a lot, we might witness the first true chapter of a new rivalry. And if you're a tennis fan, those are the moments you live for. The moment when a storyline begins. Because years later, fans might look back and say this was the match where everything changed, or they might say it was the match where Goff slammed the door shut once again. Either way, it's worth watching. And here's something else to consider. Indian Wells has a history of producing unexpected turning points in careers. Players arrive with modest expectations and suddenly find themselves making deep runs. Others arrive as favorites and struggle under the desert pressure. The conditions can be tricky. The courts are slower than many hard courts on tour. The air is dry. The rallies can stretch longer. All of that tends to reward players with strong movement and patience. Which is why this matchup is actually more interesting than it first appears. Because both Goff and Eala thrive in longer exchanges. They're comfortable defending. They're comfortable resetting points. And when two players share those traits, matches often become tactical battles rather than simple power contests. So expect adjustments. Expect momentum swings. Expect moments where one player suddenly unlocks a pattern that changes everything. And most importantly, expect drama. Because if there's one thing the women's tour has delivered consistently in recent years, it's unpredictable matches. And now we arrive at the question everyone is asking. Can Eala actually beat Goff this time? Right now, the honest answer is that Goff still holds the advantage. Her experience in big matches matters. Her defensive skills are among the best in the sport, and her ability to recover from difficult moments gives her a psychological edge. But tennis doesn't run on certainty, it runs on opportunity. And Eala has one. All she needs is the right start. All she needs is to keep the match close long, enough for pressure to build. Because when matches reach the late stages with the score tight, the entire dynamic shifts. Favorites start thinking about expectations, underdogs start believing, and suddenly every point feels heavier. That's when surprises happen. Now here's something I'm genuinely curious about. If this match goes 3 sets, who handles the pressure better? Goff has the experience, but Eala has momentum and fearless energy. Sometimes that combination is dangerous, and sometimes it produces the biggest upsets of the season. So tennis fans around the world are waiting to see which version of this matchup we get. The one from Dubai, or the one that starts a rivalry. And honestly, that's what makes sports so addictive. You never really know. Before we wrap this up, I want to ask you something. Do you think Coco Gauff will dominate again like she did in Dubai? Or do you believe Alexandra Eala is ready to flip the script and shock everyone at BNP Paribas Open? Drop your prediction in the comments. Scoreline, winner, everything. Because if this rivalry really is just getting started, this prediction might age very interestingly. And if you enjoy deep tennis stories like this, stick around. This is RedDust Report, where every match has a bigger story behind it.